Yeah, so I mean, so we're kind of. I'm gonna get into a little bit of the boring stuff in just a second when I go to save this, like save these changes that I'm gonna give the UI for. Um, with this, I'm gonna say is the translation. This is just a label, so I can um, have this things that I'm gonna put in a second. Be nice. Column span 3. So this goes all the way across. There's just one bit of text. Um, and then we're going to have 3 text fields, which I'll leave for now. I'm just going to leave them blank for now until I kind of think a bit. And then we're going to have another one of these, or actually take that width away, leave all the rest. And then we'll have another one. And I'll take this space away as well, just for formatting. This is the translation, the min bound, another 3 text fields. I guess they don't really need to be text fields, but we'll leave them as text fields. They could be numbers in the max bound. And so as I do more of this tooling, it'll become easier and easier. Well, I figure out more how it works, right? And so if we look now at the menu, I should be able to load those files. Doesn't like, do I just need spacing? I always forget sometimes. Let's look at a reference. Let's look at some documentation. So we have QML grid layout. Thought I had to set vertical and horizontal spacing separately. Row and column spacing, not horizontal and vertical. Row spacing and column spacing. And then we should be able to run it. And we will get these here. And so then if I go to say the throne and choose this guy, perfect. Yeah, right column. Yeah, some of this stuff isn't defined, so that's fine. But yeah, that I think is going to be okay. Oh, that is a bit weird. So let's see. I want to say we're not going to have column in here. We're just going to say grid layout. And then what I'm going to say here is the implicit height is going to be the grid layout height. So that can just dynamically size itself. And then what I'm going to do here is we're going to take actually, we're just going to say width is parent.width. And we're going to leave the height to itself. And actually, we're going to say plus 20 because I want 10 pixels of margin on top and bottom. And we're going to say y is 10 to give us that shunt down. X is 10 too. And then we're going to say this minus 20. So we'll have a little bit of border on the side. And I do it, this is like a very manual way of doing what I just did there. It's just so I could have some stuff happen automatically. Context menu, toString. Didn't like some of this. Where's context menu? What are you doing? It's this item. Undefined. It doesn't like what I've typed in there. Oh, here. Then this is broken as well. We need to take these anchors off. Always interactive. No anchors, please. That's handled outside of you now. The rest is fine. I wonder that first error, though, is odd. Load that up. Okay, that's a bit better. Yeah, see, it's not happy with something happening there, which is odd. Interesting. So let's see, instance list. Yeah, this one. and match should be fine. These might be getting, I need to maybe be explicit about where these are coming from. So this is that and that. That should be fine. I need to go ahead and feed in some of this stuff. So let's go ahead and do this. So we'll say text is going to be our, this is going to be our matrix, and it's going to be x4, and this is the kind of boring stuff. So this is very dependent on how some of this stuff works. But the users need to see this, right? So, and this is going to be y4. So what this is the way they store this translation is in a transformation matrix. This is, again, a very common in game development, right? In game engines, how you kind of store, like, if you want to say how you move something around, X, Y, and Z in like a three-dimensional space, and then if you want to take and scale it, because it's a list of points, right? So it's like, here's a position, and there's a line between them, and blah, 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 it goes around. If you want to take all those points and then move them somewhere, you can just say add 10 to them and 10 to all the X components and subtract 9 from the Y's, and you're going to move it around into space if you just apply all that to every one of them. But then if you want to scale them or like twist it or make it taller, you can basically build a little matrix and then multiply each one of those by that matrix. And so then you can get them to shrink down or scale up, or you can even do weird things and it will kind of skew things around. And those are stored in a 3x3 matrix that's kind of more like a 3x4. And then you have another one that's kind of a single column, but it's several rows. It's 4 rows, and that'll be your translation. And so what I'm doing there is I'm saying the translation is in this matrix. It's the very final column, X, Y, and Z, and that's my plus and minus to my X, Y, and Z. And then I have a similar thing here for these, which is I want this to be my instance, and then I'm going to have my max. This I said the min here. So this will be my min X. This one's a bit easier to label because it's like not a million fields. But then we'll have Y here and then Z here. So I'll change these to Y and Z. And then we're going to have, I'll just copy this. And then we're going to have the max here. So we'll say, or no, we'll say change from in max. And so I can just do this and have those be nice. And so what I hope to see is when I go into here, I got values. That's what I wanted to see. So we can see that this thing is translated negative 90x, minus 1.5y, and then 59z. And so this is all just entirely arbitrary, really, right? Like somewhere in the level, there's a 0, 0, 0, and then that's an offset from it, right? And so wherever that 0, 0 is arbitrary, right? When they're putting stuff in it, they'll have a 3D editor and they can see all this. So they don't really need to care about the numbers. They just position it, and if it looks good, they're good. But because that's a whole lot of stuff to build, ideally I'll export this to Blender, and then you can open it up in like Blender or something, and edit it in there, and then use my tool to read that Blender file back and shove it back into the game. That's kind of a longer term goal though, because that's a lot of extra work. But so this tells me that I'm getting the translation matrix. I'm getting my min and max bounds here. So I don't know. It's interesting. These are in this, like, these are way different than that. But then I don't know how big this thing is, whatever this is. I mean, that's kind of what this is telling me, is that maybe it's very thin in the x-axis, but then it goes from like 15y to 41y. A lot of this stuff will be, I'll just tweak it and then hit save and then reload the game and save and then hit reload. But the fact that this is like not what I'm doing, what I wanted to do. And why that is having such trouble. Do I not have an offset property? Oh, look, I'm dumb. Yeah, look, I don't have a... I'm really dumb. QInt64 offset, and then we're going to read it with offset, and it's a constant. Because we're not going to change. This is offset is just where it's at in the file. So like 0 for the beginning, you know, if it's 10 bytes in, it's at offset 10 or whatever, right? So that is fine. Oh yeah, look, I had a function to access it. I just hadn't tied it to anything. Let's make sure my instance has that as well. Yes, this one had the property set up. I just hadn't set it up for the matrix. Just a oversight. But now that'll draw, hopefully. I think that was causing my little matrix offset label. Oh, do I not store it in my pod? I do. What are you talking about? Oh no, I'm dumb again. Let's go back down here. Look at this instance. Let's just copy because it's the same location. So let's pull this up and then place you here. I'm gonna keep them in the same order. That way. Yeah, there we go. We'll put this here. And then we go back into the menu. I look at that. Look, I can see my matrix offset and my instance offset. I'm going to align this to the right-hand side, though. Let's do... And we can take the aligns off. We don't need to align that. So I'm going to do alignment, or is it horizontal alignment, I think. Horizontal alignment, align right. So it just shoves over to that right-hand side. I think that'll look a bit nicer. And then I think there's a dog crying. I need to go let him out, but then I'll be back momentarily. Yeah, there we go. So this is my entry. And so if there's... so that is a part that is it's a much different kind of reverse engineering. Well, it's a different kind of reverse engineering. So the way you do that is that in the game, once the game is running, it's loaded all this stuff in and then stored their positions in memory, and then it will edit them, and they're just somewhere in like the RAM of your machine, right? So you have to write a tool that can hook onto the executable or just look and analyze RAM. So I mean, Cheat Engine is the main tool that people use for that, and there are a degree, there is a little bit of stuff, Cheat Engine stuff for Dishonored 2. So some of that work might already be done, and I could take it could help me with working on this. But it can also get like, sometimes it plays funny with the DRM protection for a game. Because a lot of DRM protection is going to look and see, oh, is someone messing with memory while I was supposed to be doing stuff? Is something happening in between when I'm supposed to expect things to change? If you start to modify things, if you're just watching and you're saying, where's that thing, you can get that. But the trick of it is just knowing, like analyzing the program as it starts up and runs, puts these things into memory, and then trying to figure out where they go and how that changes as the game runs. Whereas what I'm doing here, it's fixed. I can rerun on the files over and over and over again. And I can be a lot more explicit of like, okay, I know it's going to be here. where you have to be a lot more kind of handle that dynamic situation when you're doing that kind of a mod. So you're a little limited there, and that would, because if you did that, then you could also potentially hook in and like change the behavior of the application. That's how a lot of mods that might add, if you have like multiplayer mods, like the multiplayer mod for Elden Ring, right? The way they'll do that is they'll hook in to the application, and they've done this kind of looking like disassembling the code for the game, and then looking at the memory map as it runs, and looking at the code and trying to reinterpret what the compiler did to turn the code that they wrote into, machine code assembly. And then they can go back and say, look, they've got a bit here where they're like jumping over here to do some modification to like how the character runs or to do some network stuff. And so they're like, okay, I can go from there because. So what you'll do when you're doing that is you'll look at system calls effectively. So you'll say like, if you're just doing stuff internal to the game, it's pretty difficult. But if you're looking at like when they're going to talk to the network or when they're going to take user input and things like that, it can be a lot easier. And that's why there's so many mods that like do auto aiming and stuff in video games, right? Because you can find that bit of the code where they're like saying in their code, like, give me, is button X pressed on the controller? You can't really, it doesn't get hidden in the code somewhere because you have to, like, the operating system is doing it and there's documentation for how it works and where it's supposed to be. So then you can just cross-reference and be like, I see that you're using this thing. I see that you're using this library and that's doing it this way. And then it gives you these places where you can hook in, run your own code to maybe even modify more stuff and let the game start. But you do start to run into things that Dishonored has as well, which is like the DRM protection. Let me run this dog to go potty. Be back in like 5 minutes or less, a few minutes.